Hey, thank you for joining our School on Wheels Lunch Hour workshop, Tutor Solutions, Advice and Tips to Suit Your Students' Needs. My name is Natasha Bayes, and I'm the Education and Training Coordinator for School on Wheels. I'm happy to have here with me for the third time Allison Maldonado, our Skid Row Learning Center instructor here at School on Wheels. Allison will be answering questions submitted in advance from some of our tutors, as well as any questions you have during the hour. She will also be giving some tips on navigating report cards and IEPs. For the purpose of sound quality, all participants are currently muted. You have the ability to ask questions at any time using the questions pane shown here. Simply type in your question and hit send. We will select the order for the questions and read them aloud. So I'm going to give a brief introduction to our host for the next hour. Allison has been our Skid Row Learning Center instructor for almost 2 years now, coming up in April. She began her teaching career as a community college mentor for non-traditional students such as single mothers, first-generation college students, and disabled persons. After graduating from UCLA with a degree in English literature and composition, Allison worked as a special education teacher for 5 years. As a teacher, Allison worked with students living with autism, emotional disturbance, learning disabilities, speech and language impairment, and various other disabilities. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Allison and thank her very much for being here. I really appreciate it, and all the tutors appreciate it as well. Thanks, Allison.
Hi, everybody. I have some questions that were submitted, and I have compiled some good advice and tips on how to fix those issues, as well as we're going to go over the IEP process for special education students, and report cards as well, how to read, understand, and what the best parts of them are. Okay, first we're going to start off with a tutor requested question. That's going to be fun. Tutor requested question. The question is, I'm a first-time tutor and started working with my student in October. She seems to be significantly behind, and I would love some feedback on the best way to work with her. Looking forward to the session. First-time tutor with 14-year young student, significantly behind. First thing I always like to tell first-time tutors is one major thing is remember what you wanted from your teacher. So think back to when you were a student and what did you want your teacher to do? Did you want your teacher to talk to you with lots of questions? Did you want your teacher to allow you to doodle? Think of the way you wanted to be taught and be able to utilize that. The strength of that will help you because you'll be in your comfort zone already and you'll be able to see if it helps the student as well. You can also remember that this might be the student's first time as well with a tutor, so definitely utilize that and use that as a bond between the two of you. Even if it's not their first time with the tutor, it's their first time with you. So make sure you guys discuss together what you want as a team. And say maybe, for example, when I was a student, I really liked it when my teacher gave me frequent breaks. What do you think about that? And then you can plan your sessions around that. Thus strengthening your comfort level between the two of you. When you're dealing with a student who is in the older age bracket but significantly lower in grade level ability, you really want to make sure that you're utilizing age-appropriate activities. What I mean by that is activities that fit the need of the student as well as the age of the student. Some examples I have here would be for language arts. Older students might not want to read little kid picture books that are at their grade level, so utilize song lyrics. I will take out, ask the student their favorite artist. We'll go online on my cell phone, smartphone, look up the song lyrics, and we have to edit it to sound like a formal narrative. It gets really silly, it gets really fun, it's age appropriate, and you're still getting language arts goals completed. High-low articles are something else you can utilize. What we mean by high-low is high interest, low level. So it means something that the student would be really excited to read about, to learn about, but it's at a lower student level. So as opposed to reading Cat in the Hat book with the student, you'll be reading a book about, say, NFL, but the vocabulary will be at a third grade level, fourth grade level, so that it is able to balance out the student's preference personally versus the student's need academically. In terms of the math section, some things that we've done before, and this gets really fun, as long as you stress at the beginning, it's all in imagination, We do catalog math or menu math, which is taking a store, a website, a catalog, something that the student's interested in, whether it's video games, clothing, books, whatever you guys can find, and utilize that. So I'll ask the student what a question such as, give me 5 items on this list that you want to purchase. Okay, and then you have to add it up. And then you give them suggestions as to what would be the sales tax for this final total. If you had 5% off, what would it be? This way they're doing math based on exactly what they're interested in, and they've picked the items themselves. Another thing that you can do, since age-appropriate math can be difficult to find properly worded word problems for the older students, we write our own. We'll get a pair of dice, and I'll have the student roll the dice, and we'll use the numbers that pop up and use them in imaginary scenarios to write a math problem. So for example, if we have 2 pairs of dice, we'll each roll. The student might get a 12 and I'll get a 4, so we'll turn it into a math problem. What would you do if 12 of your friends each bought you 4 jackets? How many jackets do you now have? This way it's personalized by the student, it's a topic that they want, and you could definitely get a feel for their personality when they're writing the problems, the things that they lean towards and the things that they talk about a lot. Another thing you could do in regards to the song lyrics and finding high-low articles, work with what the students prefer. So look up articles on celebrities, have students do research projects on their favorite celebrities, so this way they can write it in their own tone, their own comfort level. We'll even have students write their own comic books. We call them graphic novels. This way it makes them feel more adult, more mature. But yeah, that's definitely something you want to remember, is that this is your first time, so you want to be honest with the student, you want to work together, and you want to be able to make sure that you're personalizing the activities so that you're both comfortable with the situation. Okay? Next we have a question was, how is an IEP process set in motion? For those of you that don't know, IEP stands for Individualized Educational Plan, which is basically a contract between the school, the student, and the parent saying that this is what we're going to do for the student within a year. When I say contract, I really do mean contract is a legal binding document that can be taken to court, it can be utilized, so it's a very lengthy and invasive process, but it does get easy, so don't worry. One thing that you got to keep in mind is IEPs vary by district and the school. So what I mean by that is the form's different. You know, the sections are going to be the same, but the look of the form might be different, and the order of the process might vary depending on the school. If they have the service providers such as speech and therapy on site, then it happens a lot faster. If they're not on campus, there'll be a delay in the process. So just keep that in mind, that each school and district is going to have its own process. But for now, we're going to go over the main steps that should be addressed in any school no matter what. So the first thing that you need to do is assemble. Assemble a student study team. And another way to say this is the student support team. I prefer that one because student study team always made me feel like I was a researcher, and a student support team felt better for me because I felt like I was doing something to help the student as opposed to just analyzing someone. The student study team is comprised of everybody who was involved in the success of this student. And by that I mean the teachers, counselors, administration, parents, or guardians, support services. Support services are therapists and counselors such as speech and language, occupational therapy, or any other type of resource therapy like that. So once we gather everybody up who knows the student and is going to be involved, then what happens is at this meeting we sit around and discuss everybody's roles and what everybody will be doing in terms of assessing and observing the student. This is one of the most crucial parts because this is what is going to make the IEP. Okay? Assessing and observing a student is based on testing them, collecting the data, and meeting continually to discuss these findings. When we say assess, I keep wanting to say obsess, assess and observe, It could be that you are taking notes on the way that the student is working, how many minutes they stayed focused versus how many minutes they're not paying attention, even just sitting there watching them to see what angers them, what are triggers to frustrate them. All of this is all data collected and recorded because, like I said, this is a legal contract, so you do have to prove your findings. The tricky part in this is why there is a delay is because teachers have to do this while they're teaching class. So we could be in front of the class. For example, when I was a teacher, I had the special education students. It was 12 students in a class, and each one of them had an IEP. So during one lesson, I would have to teach the lesson and then record how each student responded to it in terms of how many they got correct, how many they got wrong, how many minutes they focused. So this is a lot of clipboard walking is what we called it. If a teacher was walking out with a clipboard, you know they were assessing and observing just because we need so much data collected. After we get it collected, then what we do is we write up the findings and the conclusions. We take all of the information and we basically decide what did we figure out about this student. Why are they struggling so much in math but they're having a great time in language arts? Is it the timing of the day? Is it somebody in the class they're sitting next to? We basically sit down and write all of this up in a quick little summary. We break it down into sections, which are strengths and needs. This used to be strengths and weaknesses, but it's recently been changed. So if it says weaknesses, it's probably an older IEP and definitely needs to be updated. Strengths and needs are basically what the student can do and what the student needs help to do. And they're summarized, and then we utilize all of this information to write the goals for the student, because the point of the individualized education process is to make sure that this goal fits exactly what this individual student needs. Okay? After we do that, then we have to meet and approve. This is the, hopefully, if all goes well, the final step in the writing process. When we meet and approve, everybody in the student support team re-meets, reconvenes, and then we share our findings. So we literally go around the table and each person reads aloud what they wrote, word for word. It's not a discussion. It is a literal reading of the text. And all parties have to be in agreement of each section. I highlighted all parties because if one person does not agree with it, that one section has to be revised, and the entire IEP cannot be approved until that's done. Agreements cannot be reached. If an agreement cannot be reached, then the team has to set up following meetings and basically go all the way back to step B. So that's why it's so critical to make sure that you really focus during step B, because step B is basically going to shape step C, and if we do good on step C, then we're done at step D. And that's basically our goal, is to make sure that the parents are happy and everybody is in agreement with what the student needs. Okay, now that you know what happens before, this is what it is going to consist of. So when you're reading an IEP, I don't want to be scary or anything, but a typical IEP consists of 18 sections, and these are all identified by a letter. So it's section A, B, C, and within that section you can have 1A, 2A, you can even have up to 10, 15B. So just know that it's different sections, but each section could be multiple pages within itself. The different sections are, they kind of overlap a lot, and there's a lot of them. I am not going to go over every single one, so don't worry about that. I just really wanted to emphasize how much is needed in order to get the IEP completed. So we go all the way from the top. I do want to explain present levels of performance. We call them plops. And this is what is read during the meeting. So during the meeting, everybody goes around and reads their plops and presents the strengths and needs of the students. This is where you say your findings and what you discovered in your observations. One thing you need to keep in mind is at the bottom it says signatures. This is crucial. Like I said, it is a contract, so if you're involved in an IEP, once your name is on this IEP, make sure that you are completely comfortable with what's on the IEP and what is going to happen. IEPs are usually eligible for 1 year. So if you sign that IEP, you're basically saying, for the next year, this is my goal. So just try to, if you, in all cases, try to avoid that. A typical IEP can be 15 to over 90 pages long. I have written an IEP. My biggest one was 110. It was very fun, and I never want to do it again. But just to make you feel better, you only need to worry about one section. That one section is right here, the measurable annual goals and objectives. This is the one thing you need to worry about. And right here we have an example of an IEP page straight from LAUSD. This is, as you can see right here, it says section G. So right now we're in the goals section. Up here it got cut off with the printer, the way it printed, but it'll usually say like 1G, 2G, and then the number will be circled to let you know which page that is. The main thing you want to focus on is right here. The mathematics is going to tell you, the performance area is going to tell you what subject. So it'll say math, language arts, science. Goal section, you know, not really too, right, is not really as important, the goal number. And the one thing you really want to worry about is right here, the actual goal. So I'll read it. It says, when given a mixture of 5 math problems requiring both single and multiple step solutions, the student will sort the problems based on this criteria with blank % accuracy in 3 of 5 trials as measured by student work samples. That is one goal for math. We literally have to decide how much accuracy the student's going to meet it with, how many trials. So when we present the IEP, we need to have, it says 3 out of 5. We need 5 examples, and 3 of those examples have to be meeting it with 85% accuracy. Down here, this section where it says Objective 1 and Objective 2, I like to call these the steps to the annual, which is basically saying that our annual goal is going to be met in a year. But 3 months after we set this goal in January, we're going to make sure that we can reach it at a 75% accuracy. If we can meet that, then we can move on to step 2, and by May, we should be able to reach a different accuracy or a different trial number, or even the amount of problems can change. So the benchmarks will change, but your main goal is the annual. Down here, you really don't need to worry about. This is going to be just a progress report saying, like, you know, step 1, this is how we're doing. Step 2, this is how we're doing. And then right here, this is how we're finishing. So this is going to be for the teacher to worry about. But the majority you're going to want is this right here. I did talk about PLOPs, which are the present levels of performance. Those are important, but if you want to save time, just utilize the goals, because once you read the main goal, it's basically telling you right here, a mixture of 5 math problems requiring both single and multiple step solutions. Okay, so the student is able to do single problems because we're making sure we mix, so they have the other ones in there. So we're working on multiple step. And then you see, oh, he also needs to learn on how to and when to break down a problem. So maybe if it's like 1 sentence, he can do it, but he needs word problems with multiple sentences. So just use this sheet to guide your present levels to help you out with that.
Do you want to take a question?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. We have a question that came in. It's a little bit more general than the IEPs, but it's a great question. It's from Derek. How do you make algebra interesting? I'm tutoring an 11-year-old boy. Are there any web resources for this that makes it a little interesting? Or maybe, Allison, you have other resources as well.
Yeah, I definitely love working with little young boys at that age level because they're so hyper and you know that you can get them excited. Myself personally, I was an English major, so I do struggle with math a little bit. So when I'm working with students doing algebra, the only way well, not the only way, but my main way of making it interesting is make it interactive. We turn it into silly situations where if the problem might be 2x plus 4. I will have the student stand up and do 2 jumping jacks because jumping jacks look like the shape of an X. So then they're pretending to be the 2x. And then the plus 4 that I have to do 4 jumping jacks. And this way they learn how to write it down and it really gets it out of their system. Keeps it interesting too. And then you get really colorful. So when I say colorful, you want to, when you do have something like 2x and you have to divide it by 2 to make the x by itself, I let the kid use color pencils, and they can draw their lines with squiggly lines with different colors. They make it really exciting. We turn it into stories where we'll literally say like the two, his girlfriend is now his ex and they need to separate, and my female students will tell me stories about like why the number has to find his ex, and it gets really silly, and you can actually just turn it into something interactive, because like I said, algebra is very straightforward. You really can't change the curriculum, but you could change the way you work with the curriculum, and the best way to do that is to make it interactive with the student. In connection with that, I've also utilized being able to flashcards work really well, because we'll cut up little index cards into the shapes of the X, or one student in my previous work, he had a little fake sword, and he would slash at the words. It was really silly, but it was his way of showing that he divided. And then when you have to do the same operation on one side and the other side, we would have students with little mirrors in the middle, so they show like, oh, it's the exact same thing, and they get to see the visualization of that. So it's definitely a couple things you could do to help out. As for web resources, I definitely know that there are some games online. There's a website called funbrain.com, and they have games on there where it's algebra bingo, and they also have another game that we play on the smartphone. It's called Math Whiz, and Math Workout. Oh, okay. Math Workout, and what it is, it's an algebra-based equations, and it gives you rapid-paced math problems. So on the screen on your phone, it'll say like add 2. And then the screen will change, plus 4. Then the screen will change, subtract 11. So the student has to mentally work on it and fix it in their head, and those steps, getting to be able to do that mental math really fast, will help them with the algebra, because there'd be such a breeze with the numbers, then the little additional letters don't feel so intimidating. So hopefully that helped. And next we're going to go to another tutor requested question. Okay, this next question we had was from a tutor asking for advice and strategies on how to reward and motivate a student. I know this comes up a lot on how to reward a student, working on goals. So we actually have a couple strategies that are pretty universal and can be adapted and used for everyone. Right here first off, we have, my favorite is behavior boards. A great way to motivate and reward a student is a behavior board, because it is motivating them and rewarding them at the same time. I have 2 examples here. This first one is usually for younger students, and the second one is for older students. And what you want to do is utilize each one of these squares as a different increment of something. Increment of time, increment of word problems, increment of reading section. And what you want to do is set a starting goal. So right now it's the beginning of the session. Every 5 minutes we're going to make sure we do 2 math problems, and every 5 minutes that's completed, skip to the next section, keep moving a little piece up, and you want to be able to let the student guide you towards the goals and the rewards. So you can together decide by the time we reach, say for example we're doing the snake, and you say every 5 math problems we move up a scale, and we have to get to the dotted scale to win your award. So every 5 math problems, the student gets to move up. Once they reach this place, then you could either extend the project or you can offer the reward, which could be something as simple as a tic-tac-toe game, a 5-minute break, story time where they get to tell you something about their day. But definitely let the student guide you towards what's happening, because the more they guide you and the more personalized the board becomes, the more they're going to want to do it, and the more they're going to remember to do it, and that's the important thing. We have a second example here for the older students, and we break this up by bigger sections, so like each square might even be a word that they have to learn in their vocabulary. It could be something like that every 3 squares is 10 minutes worth of work, so they get to jump up a couple squares and feel more successful. And one thing that you want to recognize is that when you're utilizing this, even the game piece can be personalized. I have a student who likes to take out a little Hot Wheels and move it on a racetrack. A previous student was obsessed with zebras, and so his was like a zebra on a grass-looking track. So definitely go ahead and personalize it. It's going to increase the success rate of the board, and it's going to create a stronger bond between you and your student because you created it together. You're using it together. And the most important part is that now you've learned more about the student through building this board together. Okay. Next. One thing I wanted to mention with the boards as well is that doing a board game like this really creates an active environment, which definitely increases the conversation level. So once the student has the homework in front of them and the board game off to the side, being able to have that double multitasking feel can definitely create more conversation and a more successful session as well. And one thing I also wanted to bring up, we talked about advice to motivate a student. If the board's not working, definitely something I try is something called story starters. And story starters are a basic one sentence, and you give the student, maybe you don't even complete the sentence, it's just a partial sentence, and the student has to finish it. So I could say something like, by the end of the session, I really want to, and then the student finishes it. Or you could say, when I'm reading, it really helps me when, and then the student will be able to tell you. You can even have the student ask you and say, like, when I'm driving to the session, I relax by, and then you can tell the student, so this way you're learning about each other. So those are definitely good strategies you can utilize to motivate each other during the individual sessions.
We have another question from Mark. What is the best way to work with different age and level students in a shelter? So sometimes we do have tutors, I'm not sure if this is Mark's case, but doing group tutoring where they're working with different age levels all at once, or sometimes you're bouncing around to different age levels very quickly. But if you want to, I mean, this is exactly what you do, Allison, in the Learning Center. How do you adjust to that? How do you maybe work with a group that's very different levels?
Well, definitely at the Learning Center it happens daily when we have an average 30 kids, kindergarten through 12th, in the same room. One thing I will definitely tell you is utilize the difference. What I mean by that is utilize the older students to help out with the younger students. Utilize what you have in the room in order to create a positive and productive environment. So one thing you could do, I'll typically have an older student who might need some help with their work. So I'll help them real quick while the younger student is utilizing free time. You know, I'll give them free time and say, well, I'm working with this student. You get to play. If you have a tablet or a smartphone, you say you get 1 round of Subway Surfers. Or you get to color on this page while I'm helping the older student. And then what you could do once that older student is ready to go, then you can tell the younger one, you know, now I'm ready, you got your time to focus, let's regroup and get focused. If there's multiple students, then you really want to reward the older student by allowing them to help the younger student. It creates an overall bond between the entire group. Because once they start working as a team, it's no longer a boss and student situation. It is now a community of growth. So it's not you in the room telling everybody what to do. It's you in the room guiding everybody to help each other. So being able to utilize the differences is a really big deal. And even just finding activities that could be adapted. Creativity is a huge deal. So one thing we'll do in the center is I'll have one of the older students come up with an I Spy sentence, and the little ones have to go around the room and find it. So it's making the older ones think and get creative, and then it has the younger students active, moving around. We'll even do 20 questions where we'll quiz on Disney, because, you know, Disney is great for any age, so we'll quiz to see who knows more, the little kids or the older kids. And music, definitely music always works for everybody. We've had where we'll play Just Dance, and I know not all shelters and everything have video games, but we'll play a song, and the students that do know it will teach it to the younger students, or the students that are unfamiliar with it will work with each other, create silly lyrics, silly dances. So just creating a sense of community between the different ages and groups is definitely going to help you, and utilizing the differences between everybody is also going to really strengthen progress during your sessions. All right. Next, we have another tutor request. This one was asked, when a tutor has difficulty keeping her student's attention or on task, how might she determine whether her student is bored or overwhelmed or lacks confidence? So the first thing I'm actually going to address is the difficulty with keeping your student on task and assessing the reasons. First thing we're going to talk about is the types of attention. So there's two different types of main types of attention, and that's positive and negative. Positive attention is they want to do well to receive the praise. Negative is they want to misbehave to get reprimanded. I know it sounds kind of silly that kids are seeking negative attention, but honestly, sometimes any attention is wanted and welcomed. I know my niece, she does the fake cry where the louder she cries, she'll look up and see, like, is anybody looking at me? Is anybody looking at me? And that's a form of negative attention. You know, if she really wanted to talk and she needed attention, she should stand up and say, can I talk to you real quick, or I need to vent. Can you please listen? So just know that any type of attention is wanted from these students. I mean, even if they're getting yelled at, hey, somebody's talking to them, somebody paid attention to what they were doing, and they'll be happy with that. So just make sure that you will understand that what we want to do is really focus on the positive behaviors, and keeping them on task is really going to be strengthened by focusing on what they're doing right and those positives. Some strategies to keep a student on task. You can work around the time that they focus. You know, be flexible but firm in that if they're only giving you 5 minutes to work, only work for 5 minutes. And then at the end of that 5 minutes, have something off to the side, such as a tic-tac-toe game or a Connect 4 game. And after every 5 minutes of working, they get to move a piece. They get to put down an X or an O. Utilize what you have, because that way you're praising the fact that the student can adapt to going back and forth between activities, that the student recognizes that their ability to work in smaller increments. Strengthen the positive praise by utilizing what they can do. And when I say be firm, I mean after the 5 minutes of break time, or if the student moves one tic-tac-toe piece, and time's up, tell them time's up. Don't let them hustle you and say, like, can I do one more X real quick? I will pick up the paper and flip it over and say, no, this is the deal. Like, if you're going to break the deal, then I get to break my deal and, you know, change the reward or something like that. So make sure that you stick to what you know, stick to what you say, so that you don't let the students take advantage of that and figure out that they can take advantage of that as well. My next strategy was actually, I got this strategy from another tutor over here at the Skid Row Learning Center. Miss Kelsey, she was previous tutor of the month, and I call it equal time, equal play. And what it is you allow the student 5 minutes of work, and within that minute, within that time frame, when they're not focusing, it equals their playtime. So if you set 10 minutes of work time, and for 1 minute they're not focusing, then they just lost 1 minute of playtime. So 10 minutes of focus work equals 10 minutes of play. 8 minutes of focus work equals 8 minutes of play. They'll want to focus more because then they get to play more. And Miss Kelsey was great with this. She had a little timer and visually showed the student the number going up and down so that he could understand, like, oh man, like my 5's now a 4. And he sat down saying, don't press down, don't press down. So he knew what she was doing, and right away was just like not having it. So thank you to Miss Kelsey for that one. This one I say a lot to my teaching assistants and tutors. You know, if it works, work it. If you find a strategy that's keeping the student on task, remember it and keep doing it. Observing yourself and assessing yourself as a tutor is very important, so that you can make sure you're observing the student and assessing what you did right and keep doing it. So if I'm working with a student and I say something silly and I see them giggling, then I know, okay, like that joke made them laugh. I'll keep saying jokes like that. So maybe it's a wordplay joke or a joke about their favorite cartoon character. Utilize it. So if it works, work it. This next one is accessorize the positive. I know it's supposed to be accentuate the positive, but I say accessorize the positive because we literally will accessorize the student with positive praise, and we will give them stickers, and we'll put stickers on little kids' arms, and we'll have them physically walk around showing what a great job they did. The older students will allow them to take leadership roles so that they get to be in charge and people get to see that they're doing a great job, and they get to see the praise and the positive confidence is now accessorized with themselves. And I definitely stress the silliness of accessorize the positive, because I will have a high school student and I will have no shame tying a certificate around her neck and having her sit there, and it's silly, we joke about it. You know, if you could see they're really uncomfortable, you know, find your balance, take it off, but if they're going with it, then really make sure that they feel praised and appreciated for what they're doing and what they're accomplishing. The second part of the question specifically asked about determining whether the student's bored, overwhelmed, or lacked confidence. So what I'm going to do is kind of break down how to assess and accommodate and I put labeled because I don't like to literally say that a person is this, because you know, you could be bored one day and the next day just not feel positive or not feel very confident. You know, you could be having a Nikki day. So you know, just remember that aspect, and remember that these are just labels. It does not define who the student is. And I actually really relate to this because I am the first one. When I was in school, I was personally labeled, I was lazy. They told me I was lazy and that I was a troublemaker. I was just bored. I was really just bored because as soon as I would get the assignment, it was so easy for me, I just didn't want to do it. Or I would do it, get done, and just want to entertain everybody else. I would think, I'm done, why aren't you guys? You know, I'm going to bother you until you pay attention to me. So please know that sometimes a student, you know, they're not lazy, they just might not be interested in the material. Or they're not bored, they might not be lazy, they're just bored because it's just not interesting to us. So make sure that for bored, lazy, and uninterested labeled students, you challenge them. We love to be challenged. Give us a challenge and make us work to prove to you that we're not lazy, that we're not boring. Puzzles, riddles, brain teasers, always a big deal. I've even had it where I'll give a student a brain teaser at the beginning of the session, and by the end they have to solve it. And if they do, then they get an award. If they don't solve it, then I get something from them. So make it really fun, make it really entertaining. And one thing my teachers did for me as a student was I had supplemental activities, so when I finished with one thing, I would just bust out something else. And it was always something fun, like calligraphy or sign language. I even had a tie-dye section one year. So just make sure that you're stimulating that student. Allow free thinking with structure. You want to make sure that we're being able to express ourselves verbally and artistically versus the formal. You know, like we want to be able to get our ideas out. We want to be able to discuss. We want to pick each other's brains. We want to definitely get that interaction going. And one way to do that is to be able to let us get creative with our activities. Let us get creative with our homework assignments. But when I say with structure, we need to be able to formalize everything. You know, we can speak really silly with our activities, we can get really silly with their creative writing, but as long as we write it down, it's formal and appropriate so that we still get to utilize everything that's going on at the same time with us. All right. The next one was students lacking confidence. When students lacking confidence, this might be for a couple different reasons. It could be because they're behind in grade level, you know, or they have emotional issues clouding their focus. They might not be able to focus, so it's showing that they're not confident. You know, you're going to want to mix lower and level grade level work together. So if you're giving student math work, you would give them a word problem that you know they can do with one that you know you need to help them on. Two more you know they could do. one more you know you need to help them on. This way they're able to see that they can do things. The whole paper is not a big letdown. There is stuff in between that can be accomplished to help you accomplish the stuff you don't know. Timing tests to show growth is a big deal, so you could chart the progress. So I have a student here who's working on multiplication. We'll give her a whole sheet of her number 8 multiplication and time it. And then she has to do another one by herself, no time, and then the third one's timed again. So this way she could see how much progress she made. You could even do it one week and again the next week and see how much progress has gone up. A visual representation of their progress is a definite confidence booster to help them understand. Another thing we have is a game I used to play called Teaching Teacher. And Teaching Teacher was something I used to do for students that really showed a lack of confidence and kind of introverted behavior in class. And what I would do is allow them to teach the teacher. That their job was to teach me something and I had to prove to the class that I could do it. One time a student taught me origami, and in front of the class I had to make a swan where if you move the tail it like bobbed its head up and down. It took me 6 tries, but I did it, and the student was very confident after because he taught the teacher, and especially confident when your teacher's messing up a lot and you have to correct them. And I wasn't faking it. That was the best part, is I think they could see how sincere it was. The next one we have is a student who's overwhelmed. Overwhelmed students are just the same as overwhelmed adults. You know, our schedule and our routine is just overwhelming, or we don't have one, thus we're unable to process everything that's going on. You know, some adults or students might overwhelm themselves with too much work, or they might overwhelm themselves by not knowing how to handle what they do have. So that's definitely one thing to keep in mind. Overwhelmed doesn't necessarily mean a lot of work. It could just mean a lack of focus. One thing we do is called throwaway time and problems. Visual representations for students that are overwhelmed makes a big deal. So making index cards with different goals on it, like solve problems 1 through 5, write 1 paragraph, and after every problem is addressed, then you could literally throw away your time. Pick up the index card, rip it up, and get rid of that problem. So the student sees the stack of problems dwindling. Planners, big huge deal. Planners are always very, very helpful. A student can definitely really learn how to feel less overwhelmed if they learn how to schedule themselves and how to pace themselves. And figuring out when the best time for them to do things is also very helpful. Immediate response rewards. When students are overwhelmed and they don't have that routine or schedule set for them, they need immediate responses to understand that what they're doing is okay and what they're doing is right. If there's no immediate response, then they'll continue to feel overwhelmed, not knowing if that what they already did went right. So now they're worrying about the past and the future. Immediately responding and letting them know that that issue is addressed and gone will allow that chip to roll off the shoulder and everything else to be positive from then on. Gotta crawl before you walk is a saying that I say around the center a lot. The kids kind of copy me when I say it. It's kind of silly. But I literally tell them, like, you gotta crawl before you walk. You know, if you're feeling overwhelmed, you have to do the little things first. The gotta crawl before you walk wall is a drawing that we do that mimics the evolutionary wall. So it has the little goals that get bigger, that grow into the bigger goals or the bigger things that need to be addressed. So the student literally goes from crawling to the first goal that they need to achieve and progressing till they're walking tall and feeling confident that they accomplished all this stuff that overwhelmed them. So I will straight up tell a student, you know, you weren't born running. You had to learn to sit up. You had to learn to crawl. You had to learn to stand. You had to learn to balance. You know, you got to crawl before you walk. So it definitely helps the student understand why it's important to not feel overwhelmed and why it's important to address those overwhelmed feelings. All right. Next, we have another tutor request, and this tutor request is in regards to a tutor that is considered herself a quiet tutor with a very talkative student.
Actually, I'm sorry, I was interrupting, but
Oh,
we
go
actually
ahead.
had another question too that was related. So I just wanted to tie those two together. The question was, when you only have an hour to help with homework at a shelter with kids of different ages, some with homework, some not, should I include some play as a reward in this limited time? So maybe you can just think about both of those as you answer.
Yeah.
So you can go ahead with this one if you want. I'll keep that up for you.
Okay. That's a great question, though, because it's very possible, even though it takes a little finesse. So in this request that we have a quiet tutor with a talkative student, wants to know how to connect and to complete homework when the student does not take it into the session. This happens a lot. It's very common, so don't feel bad. It's very, very common. First, we're going to talk about how to connect and balance communication. When I say balance communication, it's basically how to make it so the student's not doing all the talking, but to allow you to step a little bit out of your comfort zone and open up a little bit more. Then first and foremost, the most important thing is to make it entertaining rather than formal. So being able to take a formal conversation and adapt it to fit a youthful mindset is very helpful. There's a couple of things you could do. One thing we have is for older students, post-it talking points. Post-it talking points are simply when you have a talkative student, I will hand her, and I say her because I really did it with one of my students, a stack of Post-its, and she had to write down all the different topics she wanted to discuss. And throughout the session, as she stayed focused, her reward would be to pick a Post-it and discuss. So she was able to maintain her focus. She didn't need to rush it all as fast as she could and get it out before she forgot, because that was one of her excuses. We need to talk now so I don't forget. Another issue she would always say is that if she doesn't get out of her system, she's not going to be able to do her work because all her mind's going to be on that. So definitely the Post-its help. You know, get it off your mind, and then as we're working on it, get rid of the Post-its. Another thing you could do for younger students is 20 questions. And not 20 questions in that you're trying to figure out what I am, what item or people person. You're trying to figure out who I am, who this student is, and who the student's trying to figure out who you are with this game of 20 questions. You really definitely need to use open-ended questions. I know with 20 questions it's supposed to be yes or no, but for our sake we're going to use open-ended only. And you want to mix the silly with the personal. And I put personal quotations because I don't mean get personal, like ask about previous deaths in the family or missing family members. The silly example I have is, if an elephant walked into your classroom, what would you do? You know, the students automatically hopefully going to laugh at the thought of an elephant being in their classroom, and then being able to hear how they react really, really tells you how a student personally reacts to situations in life. So it'll teach you how they're going to react to you surprising them with something, to them coming to a session with a surprise event happening. It'll really help you learn how they address things. A personal example would be, how would you explain peer pressure to a friend? You're really getting to know how they interact with different people, their viewpoint on what peer pressure even is, but you're not getting into anything that will really address something specific to that student. And you can even tell the student, you know, don't give me any examples, don't use anything that has happened, let's pretend you need to do this in the future, so as not to accidentally bring up any of those past points or past feelings. Okay. Next we're going to talk about the issue with not taking in homework to a session. I have a name for this, and it's called I don't have homework syndrome. Also known as my teacher didn't give me any syndrome. And basically I have two things that I say to the students every single day, and that's prove it. The second I hear I don't have or didn't give me, I say prove it. When I say prove it, it means I literally want to see what you did. So there's a couple different ways you can address that. There's the review rebuttal, which is literally saying, like, if you say you did it or you don't have it, prove it. Show me something that shows you don't have homework. So I'll request work from the day. You know, if you did it, or you show me. If you don't have homework, show me what you did in class and why you don't have homework. Sometimes they'll even say they did it in school. Great. Show me so we can proofread it to make sure you did it right. You can also request that the teacher, for the planner aspect, you could request that the teacher signs a planner saying that there's no homework. So you could even have the student write in the planner like no homework, and the teacher has to initial it to show you that the teacher agrees there's no homework. It also, you can extend it to getting signatures when the assignments are given to make sure that the student's writing it down and to make sure that the student is getting the right directions for the homework as well. And you know what, honestly, it takes a load off of the teachers because all they have to do is give you their initials, and makes it a lot easier. Another thing you could do is utilize the classworks and notes, because you know what, sometimes students don't have homework. Older students might have 6 classes in a day. One teacher might not give it thinking the other ones are, but every single teacher has the same mindset, so they don't have homework. Utilize the classwork and notes. Tell the student, okay, if you don't have homework, show me the notes you wrote in class. Hold them accountable for it and use that to shape your session, since you're not seeing any other method of communication between the teacher and yourself.
We actually have a poll we're going to launch to see, to ask you a question about communication with the teacher. So everybody who's listening, you can go ahead and participate. So the question is, are you in communication with your student's teacher? And yes, I've communicated with my student's teacher. I tried communicating but have had no response, or no, I have not tried communicating with the teacher. So we're going to give it just a second for that to register. All right. So, are you sure that one? Okay, so 0% said yes, I've communicated. 30% said I tried communicating but have had no response, and I understand that that is a common issue. And 70% said no.
All right, well, that works out perfectly for the next tutor requested question, which was, what is the best way to communicate with teachers? As a previous teacher for 6 years, this was tricky. One thing I really want people to understand is that one way I always describe the workload of a teacher is, take a doctor. If you have a teacher, the teacher is in the classroom with 30 students at the same time. Now imagine a doctor in a doctor's office with all 30 patients from the entire day at one time, telling them their problem and what they need to fix. Doctors can schedule the students back to back to back. Teachers, we have them all day in the classroom. So please know that as much as you try to communicate, it is difficult. I totally understand how difficult it can be to communicate with a teacher. So here's some strategies you could do. Number one, email is the best. I will honestly tell you, I rarely got my phone messages when I was a teacher. And if you call during the day when students are there, we're never going to know you called. A lot of times the phone messages I received was me walking at the end of the day, passing the front desk, and the secretary saying, "Oh, Miss Allison, here's your messages from earlier." I'm already on my way home. I've already closed up. I've already been there for 9 hours. Not going to answer those phone calls as I'm walking out the door. So yes, email is the best. You really want to stress that you're taking away, and I don't mean to sound condescending about this, but stress that you're taking away the workload as opposed to creating more. As a teacher, we already have a lot to take on, so requesting additional worksheets, additional assessments is really going to push your email to the bottom of our list, to be perfectly honest. Let us know, stress that you're taking away, stress that you're making our job easier, and that whatever you complete with the student, you are willing to share, because that will definitely make us more open to analyzing the situation with you, as opposed to feeling like now we're just working as that student's personal tutor. You want to share notes that are applicable to the class only, and by this I mean I would get emails that from parents telling me about the situation that happened for the hour before they get to the homework topic, and As adorable as the story was, we just don't have the time or the priority for that. So make sure that you're sharing notes that are applicable to the class only. Don't address other classes, other assignments. Stick to the topic. Make sure you're asking the teacher's opinion. Don't please try to avoid emailing a teacher telling us what to do or how to handle the student. That will automatically get pushed away as well. Ask for the opinion. A way to word it is, I've noticed that so-and-so reacts this way. Have you seen the same thing in the classroom? Not, when I'm working with so-and-so, they do this, so you should do this to handle it. Definitely give us an opinion. Definitely let us know what works for you and what can make our job easier. And keep it short and sweet. I use the scrolling rule, where if I have to scroll down on the email, it's too long, didn't read. And your main goal should be the first thing that you talk about. If you are writing to ask a teacher what the student needs in math, your first question should be, as a tutor for so-and-so, I would like to help you increase so-and-so's math skills. What method or what topic would you like me to address for you? Right away, I know what you want, I know who you are, why you want it, and what I can do for you really quickly in one sentence email. Please work on 4 through 5 multiplication. Bam, happy, done, productive.
So we're coming towards the end of the hour, but we have one more topic to cover, which is report cards. So we'll go ahead. If anybody has to leave us early, that's fine. We have recorded this session, and we'll send out a recording later. But if you could stick with us, that's great too.
All right. Just to finish up with the best way to communicate with teachers. One thing you'll want to do if it's getting difficult, involve the student. Ask for initials on planners or notes praising the student. It's another way of like a hidden request to tell the teacher, like, look, somebody's here on the other side helping you out. I'll even write little notes in the planner, letting the teacher know that the student did complete the homework. So the teacher initials saying this is the homework, I initial saying this is what we did. This way it shows communication. You really don't have to email, do anything, and the student's going to do the work for you. Compile a small list of questions for the student to ask the teacher. This way the student just has to walk up and say, hey, Mrs. So-and-so, can you remind me what that history project was? You don't have to email, there's nothing extra, and then have the student write down the answers so that they can come back and show you. I asked the teacher, this is what they said. You can also request that the teacher initials the answer. So the student will say, hey, Miss So-and-so, what was the history project? Miss So-and-so says the history project. Student writes it down and runs up, shows the teacher, hey, is this what you said? Did I write it down right? Yes, and then they can initial it really quickly. It allows for the student learning responsibility. The teacher doesn't have to do any extra work, and it can be done while we're talking and working with other students, so it's a big help. And as Natasha pointed out, the last thing we're going to discuss is report cards. Report cards are very entertaining for us teachers to write. It can get tricky because it basically feels like you're giving your opinion on the student, but you have to verify it with data. So just know that report cards are very important, and we do take a lot of time when we address them. For elementary school, report cards are broken down into multiple sections. And what I really want to stress with report cards in elementary school is getting a 4 does not equal an A grade. A lot of students will see the score down here below and assume this is A, B, C, fail. 4 does not equal an A. When it says exceeds the standards, it means that the student is getting an A+, doing above and beyond. When a student is getting a level 3, which means proficient, it means that they have an 80% mastery of the standard or the goal. 80% mastery is passing in school districts. We do not expect 100% from students. If you can do this with 80% accuracy, you are proficient and you can handle this. That score of a 3 is what I would consider equal to an A. You're doing the job, you're meeting the standards, you're on top of things. Mid-school year, students that received an A should receive early intervention. If you see a 1 on the student's report card, that's basically saying that they are below grade level. An example would be if you're working with a 3rd grader, and in math they're getting a 3. They know what they're doing, they can handle it. In English they're getting a 2. You know, they're struggling, but they're keeping up. We're able to work with this. And then science, they're getting a 1. That 1 is basically saying that there is a big gap, and we need to really focus on science for this next section to ensure that the student doesn't get further behind in other ones. So just know that a big deal 4 is not what a student is striving for. I mean, 4 is great to strive for, but a 3 is what the goal is. Okay. Next we have 6th through 12th grade report cards. This is a typical LAUSD report card. One thing that you really want to check first would be the subject and the class names to ensure that the student isn't just taking a bunch of electives. I've seen report cards that say assistant, office work, and it was basically saying like the student just had electives all day long. So, but they had straight A's. So make sure that the subjects are appropriate. This section right here, absences, I really want to stress, I picked this one because it did have like a 1 at the end and a 4 and a 2. Teachers take attendance at different periods of the day. So what I mean by that is 1st period teacher might take it right away. 4th period teacher might take it at the end. 3rd period teacher might take attendance at the end of the day when all the students are gone. So just know that that can fluctuate based on the teacher, and you really want to concern yourself with the first 2 periods because that's going to tell you if this kid's even making it to school or not. For the example we have here where the student is missing a little more absent during 3rd and 5th period, when I look at that, I assume that is around lunch period and break time, which for me would say that the student's getting there really late or wanting to leave really early. But they're making it, the level 2, the number 2 is low at the top, which means that at least they're getting to school on time and making it through the day. You want to keep track of the credits right here. The credits are basically what is going to help configure the GPA for the grade. AP classes and some other classes might get higher credit levels, so you want to make sure that if a student's taking a bunch of 4s, they're still taking classes that will bump them up to the required level. Some classes are even a 2, so make sure if they're taking a 2 class, then they're really taking an extra one to make up for those lost credits. The official categories for the grades on these report cards are the marks, work habits, and cooperation. The unofficial teacher version are the grades, are you turning things in, and do you speak in class? So basically our work habits are saying like, are you getting the work done, are you turning it in, are we seeing progress? And cooperation is just how are you doing in class? Are you able to respond? Are you able to answer? Do you groan when we say it's time for group work? Do you get up and pick a group? So that's the way I like to describe it. It's your grade, how you're doing things, and how you're showing me you can do these things are the various different ways that we work with students. The last question we had was a tutor requested question on how to deal with a student. We received this question this morning, and it was how to deal with sleep issues and anger issues. This does happen a lot. Students fall asleep all the time, which is why a lot of classrooms are always very, very cold, because cold tends to keep people awake. Unfortunately, I was the opposite, so the colder I got, the more I cuddled in my jacket, and the more I slept. So one thing you could do dealing with sleep, if a student's having problems sleeping at their shelter or hotel, wherever it is, please feel free to help them out. Ask around to see if you can get them earplugs so that when they're trying to sleep at night, it's an easier situation for them. And some teachers will actually allow earplugs in the classroom so that you can drown out the outside sound. Misconception of earplugs is that it takes away all the sound. It really is just noise reduction so that it helps you focus on the main source of what you want to hear. I wear them to concerts a lot because then you don't hear the people singing next to you, you hear the speakers. and you don't hear me singing. So make sure you can ask around for the resources too. I think the tutor mentioned that the student was a 15-year-old, so it's an older student. But I do know of various shelters. I know the shelters down here have a bunch of pillow pets for the kids to help them comfortable. 15-year-old might not want that, but definitely, like, if you even have a pillow pet, get a pillowcase. Cover that up. They don't have to see it's a cute little, like, unicorn, but it's a big fluffy pillow for them. So get creative, utilize what you can. Make sure that they're learning how to self-advocate. I put can't fix a problem that doesn't exist because that's what I tell my students all the time. Like, I can't fix your problem if I don't even know what's happening. I'm not psychic. Like, if you're not sleeping at night, I need to know that so I can give you time to wake up. I can give you a little bit of sugar at the beginning of class to help you, give you a lollipop with some sugar to help you stay focused. I basically want the student to learn how to advocate. If they're falling asleep in class, tell their teacher, you know, hey teacher, I'm having a hard time sleeping at night. Is it okay if I come in after school for 10 minutes and get some extra work done? Can I get extra time on this assignment? You know, speak up and see what you need to do to fix this problem. And just being able to stand up for themselves is going to improve everything. It's going to improve their confidence. It's going to improve their attitude. It's going to improve their sleep. And it's going to improve their anger. The last thing we mentioned was anger issues. You know, how do you deal with a student or a parent that is addressing you in an angry way? I know this sounds really silly, but anger to me is a compliment. Anytime a student is yelling at me, no joke, been cursed at. Students get very, very creative. I take it as a compliment because to me that's saying the student feels comfortable enough to share how they feel, and that their anger is going to allow me to strengthen my bond with them, to show them, look, you just unloaded all this on me. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not running away. I'll be back next week with hoping you're feeling better. So use that anger to strengthen a bond between you and the student, and take it as a compliment. You know, the safer they feel, the safer or the more they're going to want to share with you, and sometimes that sharing does come out as anger. If you're dealing with a parent who's in an angry situation and maybe getting really vocal around you and the student, I always try to stay calm, quiet, and compromising. And what I mean by that is, you know, let them get it out. You do not want to interrupt an angry parent. I don't even want to be interrupted when I'm angry, and I'm not even a parent. So just stay quiet. Let them get it out. They obviously have something on their chest that they want you to hear. Staying calm throughout it. I do the nod and smile. Like, I just really try to smile and just nod and show them, like, I'm listening to you and I'm not getting frustrated with you yelling at me. I had a previous teaching assistant that student that yelled at her, it would make her angry. And we had to remind her, put your hands in your pockets so the student can't see you balling up your fist. You know, her face was smiling, her face was like, you know, go ahead, get it out. And you could see her fist just moving in her pocket. The student didn't notice because to him she looked calm. And that in turn helped him calm down, because I can guarantee if he saw her getting angry or she would have gotten angry, it would have been a big back and forth of anger. And compromising, you know, if a parent's coming in trying to set some boundaries or some rules that don't apply to the session, compromise. Let them know, you know, during the session we really try hard to focus on our goals together, so is it okay if we set the goals here and maybe later he can have those consequences in regards to some other situation? So try to compromise. Don't just tell the parents, no, we're not going to do that. Let them know that they're the parent. You 100% respect their parenting advice and will take it into consideration, but you do not have to necessarily follow it. And what happens when you leave the session is what is going to happen regardless of the way you handled it or not. So just make sure that you handle it the best you can while you're there, as opposed to escalating the situation, because you don't know what's going to happen when you leave. So you want to make sure that everybody is happy, quiet, calm, and compromising in the end, basically. But yeah, there you go, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. Our emails are up here. Allison is a wealth of resources, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions at any time, and I can refer you to other resources too. So thank you for joining us. We're planning more workshops for this year. If you have any expertise in any areas and would like to host a workshop, please contact me. I'm always looking for presenters. We just want to make sure our tutors feel equipped with the skills necessary to help our students, and we really appreciate what you do every single time you go to your tutoring sessions, and we'll help you stay with us for a long time.
Yeah, and thank you for all the questions. It's always interesting for me to be able to hear what's happening outside of the center and all throughout Southern California, and to know that the good things we're doing here are going on everywhere is really helpful to me and motivating.